Welcome to the deep dive. We take the sources you're interested in and really break them down, giving you the core information, kind of like your shortcut.
Yeah, exactly. And today we're diving into something pretty foundational, how the idea of sustainability developed, specifically looking through the lens of the United Nations.
Okay, we've got some lecture excerpts here, right? Two versions discussing the UN's take on sustainability.
That's right. Our mission really is to understand where the UN started with this concept. What was their initial view and how did it, begin to take shape?
Right, so to get that initial picture, we probably need to rewind quite a bit. Back to 1945, when the UN was actually formed. That year is, well, it's obviously a big one.
Oh, absolutely. 1945, end of World War II. The world had just gone through, unimaginable conflict.
Twice in a few decades.
Exactly. World War I, then World War II. So the UN's creation was fundamentally about saying, never again, trying to build a system to prevent that kind of global war.
And it became this huge organization. The sources mention, 193 member states now in 2024?
Yeah, 193. It really underscores the global reach we're talking about here.
So this massive body needs guiding principles. What did the original UN Charter actually set out to achieve? What were the main goals?
Well, the sources boil down to four key aims. First, and maybe the most obvious, was saving future generations from war.
Makes sense, given the context.
Definitely. The second aim was about reaffirming faith in fundamental human rights, and it specifically mentions the dignity and worth of every person and equal rights for men and women.
Okay, that one jumps out. Human rights right at the start. That feels very relevant to sustainability discussions later on, doesn't it?
It really does. It lays down a core value. The third aim was about establishing conditions where treaties and international law could be respected, basically, maintaining order.
Right, the legal framework.
And the fourth aim, this is interesting, was to promote social progress and better standards of life.
Ah, okay. So not just preventing bad things like war, but actively promoting good things like better living standards.
Precisely. And that fourth one, along with the human rights focus, you can sort of see them as early seeds for what the UN would later think about regarding sustainability. It's about human well-being.
Got it. So
Right.
those are the aims. Did the Charter also give, like, guidelines on how to do this?
Yes. Four main guidelines are highlighted. First, practice tolerance, live together peacefully, basic neighborliness on a global scale, you could say.
Okay.
Second, unite strength to maintain international peace and security. Collective security, essentially.
Makes sense.
Third was ensuring armed force is used only in the common interests. So trying to prevent nations just using military power whenever they want.
Right. Regulating the use of force. And the fourth guideline. Does that link back to the aims?
It does, directly to that fourth aim we mentioned. The fourth guideline is to employ international machinery for the promotion of the economic and social advancement of all peoples.
Ah, there it is again. Economic and social advancement.
Right.
So it's explicit right from the beginning.
It really is. This guideline in particular, clearly foreshadows the later focus on development, on improving lives, which becomes central to the economic and social pillars of sustainability thinking.
It's fascinating. That link is there right from 1945. Even though they weren't using the word sustainability yet, the groundwork related to human well-being and progress was being laid.
Absolutely. Those foundations, human rights, social progress, economic advancement, they provide the context, the value system within which the specific idea of sustainability would eventually emerge and be defined by the UN.
Okay, so foundation set in 45. Fast forward. When does the actual word sustainability pop up in UN documents according to our sources?
The sources pinpoint 1980. That's when the World Conservation Strategy was published. And it's flagged as the first UN document to explicitly use the term sustainability.
1980. Okay. And what did sustainability mean to the UN back then in that first official use? What were the goals of that strategy?
Well, this 1980 strategy laid out three main goals. First, maintaining essential ecological processes and life support systems. Think clean air, clean water, soil health, the basics nature provides.
Right, the planet's plumbing and wiring, sort of.
Kinda, yeah. Second goal, preserving genetic diversity, protecting the variety of life, plants, animals, everything.
Biodiversity, got it.
And the third goal was to ensure the sustainable utilization of species and ecosystems. So using natural resources, but in a way that doesn't use them up or destroy them for the future.
Okay, listening to those three goals, Ecological processes, genetic diversity, sustainable use. It sounds very, very focused on the environment.
It was. That's a key point the sources make. This first UN definition of sustainability in 1980 was heavily weighted towards environmental concerns.
Which kind of tracks with how people generally thought about sustainability back then, maybe? More about conservation and pollution.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. In the public consciousness and even in policy circles around 1980, sustainability often meant environmental protection first and foremost. The UN's initial definition really reflected that focus on, looking after the planet's natural systems.
So we see this path, starting in 45, with broad goals for humanity, peace, rights, progress. Then, by 1980, a specific focus emerges under the sustainability label, aimed squarely at the environment.
Exactly. That World Conservation Strategy is a major marker. It's the UN formally bringing the environment into its core concerns under this specific banner of sustainability, acknowledging that the natural world is fundamental.
And the sources mentioned just briefly that this wasn't the end of the story. The UN's thinking kept evolving after 1980.
That's correct. They note that, more documents followed. And these later efforts built on that 1980 environmental foundation, but they started to broaden the picture. They began to more explicitly weave in the social and economic dimensions that were already hinted at back in the 1945 Charter. Recognizing that, well, you can't really separate environmental health from people's lives and economic realities. It's all connected.
Right. So pulling it all together for this dive, the UN starts in 45, aiming for peace, but also embedding these crucial ideas about human rights and better living standards for everyone.
Yeah, those are baked in from the start.
Then, decades later, 1980, they formally adopt the term sustainability, but initially it's very much through an environmental protection lens.
That's the core takeaway from these sources. Yes, an environmental focus in 1980, but one that stands on the shoulders of those much earlier, broader commitments from 1945 concerning human dignity and social progress.
It does make you think, though, if the starting point in 1980 was so strongly environmental, what happened? What kind of global events or, shifts in understanding might have pushed the UN to then expand that definition later on to bring the social and economic aspects much more to the forefront?
That's a great question to ponder, isn't it? It points towards how these big, complex ideas aren't static. They evolve as our understanding of the world and all its interconnected challenges deepens over time.